Salutations, boys and girls. Well, we left when Miss Mack was talking to Mr. E about being a good teacher, and she was trying to tell them that you could be a good teacher and be strict and have fun with your students. So let's see what's going on. I understand, Miss Mack said, but you can have fun and learning at the same time. Students can have respect for you and like you at the same time. Look at Mrs. Brisbane. Yes, look, I squeaked. I wish I knew her, Mr. E said. This is such a great class, and I don't think I've lived up to her standards. But it was so awful to know that the students in that first class didn't like me. You'd think I'd have learned by now, but sometimes I forget. You know, teachers are human. I have an idea, Miss Mack said. I'm going to visit a friend tonight, and I'd like you to come along. Are you free? Yes, Mr. E said, but I have to prepare for tomorrow. Miss Mack smiled mysteriously. I think you can do both. Before long, they were gone. Og, I'm sorry to say, I thought Mr. E just didn't care. I told my friends when we were alone, I'm glad I was wrong, but I wonder if Mrs. Brisbane still cares. Boing! Og sounded confused. She's abandoned her students to go off and become a ballerina. I explained. That just doesn't seem right. There, I'd said it. I love Mrs. Brisbane with all my heart. A small hamster has to offer, but I have to admit I was pie-whacked by her behavior, and a little disappointed too. I guess Og was disappointed too because he dived into the water and splashed wildly. I'm not one for splashing, so I hopped on my wheel for a good long spin. Humphrey's Detectionary. When you solve a mystery, you might learn some shocking information involving badly behaved students. Now I'm asking myself, I wonder where Mr. E is going with Miss Mack. I bet you have some ideas. Chapter 12, The Case of the New Mr. E. As the light in the room grew darker that evening, the pumpkins on the walls grew brighter. For some reason, those jack-o'-lanterns really bothered me. Aldo liked them, though. When he came in to clean that night, he said, Whoa, I almost thought I was in the wrong room. He stopped and admired all the decorations. They did a real good job. Speaking of Halloween, I have a present for you, Humphrey. Oh, I love, love, love presents. He wheeled his cart to the middle of the room. Then he reached into his lunch sack and pulled something out. Maria helped me with this, Aldo explained as he walked toward my cage. He opened the door and put something orange in my cage. A little Halloween treat, he said. In front of me was a tiny little jack-o'-lantern. It was actually a piece of pumpkin with carrots and seeds that made a little face. It looked perfectly hamsterolicious. Thank you a million times, I squeaked excitedly. Oh, it's my pleasure, Aldo replied. I started to nibble on the pumpkin right away while Aldo gave Og his nightly froggy food sticks. Poor Og, I guess he'll never know how tasty pumpkin is, especially the seeds. When Aldo was ready to leave, he said, I've got a joke for you two. What do ghosts eat on their cereal? I have no idea, I said. Og didn't say a thing, not even a boing. Blueberries! Then Aldo burst out laughing and kept on chuckling as he rolled his cart out of the door. After he'd gone, when I looked up at the row of pumpkins on the wall, they didn't look scary. They just looked yummy. Class, it's time to begin, Mr. E announced the next morning. We have a lot to do today. Can we play basketball? Simon asked. Nope, not now, Mr. E answered. What about word war? Rosie asked. Nope, not today, Mr. E said. We've got a lot of work to do. There were a few groans, but not many. We're going to start with Mrs. Brisbane's mystery word, he said. Take out a sheet of paper. Mr. E still had small round glasses and red hair, but this was different. This was a different Mr. E than I'd seen before. This was a real teacher. Besides, I was happy that we were going back to mystery words. I knew what pie-whacked meant and pizzazz, but today Mr. E gave us a new word to figure out. Persizzle. I wondered if it meant a hot handbag. He wrote this sentence on the board. When you go to the store, please get some persizzle for tomorrow's lunches. Gosh, persizzle had to be some kind of food, but it could be anything, carrots, apples, celery, or other crunchy things. Then he wrote another sentence. My grandmother spent the afternoon teaching me how to bake persizzle. I don't think a grandmother would spend a whole afternoon teaching somebody how to make or bake a carrot or an apple. Nope, I like them raw. And here's the third sentence. My favorite breakfast is persizzle with jam. Any ideas what it could mean? Jam? It's a sweet, fruity spread. I know that. And as far as I know, humans really like to eat jam on, you guessed it, bread. Persizzle was bread. I got 100% on my assignment. My friends were all shouting out bread, so they got 100% too. I was most excited because Mr. E was following Mrs. Brisbane's lesson plan, and as far as I could tell, everybody still liked him. Personally, I liked him a little more than I had the day before. I didn't have much time to think about persizzle with jam because Mr. E then went into a math lesson that didn't involve basketballs or running or shouting. My friends worked hard and didn't talk unless they were called on. Just before recess, Mr. E talked about Egypt. He had me on the edge of my cage, talking about pyramids, mummies, and the Nile River. I tell you, I was shivering and quivering during that lesson. And when my friends went out to play, Mr. E sat at Mrs. Brisbane's desk and studied lesson plans in her binder. We got so much done that day, I'm not sure Mrs. Brisbane could have kept up. But my classmates and I did. Mr. E even gave out homework assignments, real homework. No one complained because he explained why it was important. Late in the afternoon, helpful Holly reminded Mr. E that he needed to choose who would take me home for the weekend. Mr. E asked my friends to raise their hands if they hadn't taken me home yet and thought their parents would give permission. A lot of hands went up. How was Mr. E going to choose? He looked at the clock. I think we have time for a quick spelling bee to decide. He asked Rosie, Joey, Tall Paul, Thomas, and Sophie to spell different words. They all got through the first round. On the second round, Rosie missed on the word symbol. I was surprised there was a Y in it too. On the third round, Tall Paul missed on the word misery. I completely understand because the S does sound like a Z. Sophie went down on the word mystify. I would have too. It was down to Joey and Thomas, and for the next two rounds, neither of them missed a word. They were difficult words too. Disease, fierce, schedule. The spelling bee was suddenly very exciting, and it was almost time for the bell to ring. I'll tell you what, Mr. E said, you've done such a great job. Would you agree to share, Humphrey? The boys looked puzzled. I was a little pie-whacked too. I hope they weren't planning to split me in half. Thomas could have him Friday night, then Joey could pick him up at Thomas's house on Saturday and have Humphrey Saturday night, Mr. E explained. Would your families agree to that? Neither boy looked happy, but they both nodded. Bring back notes from your parents tomorrow, Mr. E told them, just as the bell rang. All right, we'll stop there, boys and girls.